This is one of our spirit schools, ministered by Gustave Leroux. Please enjoy it. Know that it will take you deeper, higher, and wider into Yahweh. Please subscribe and have a great day.
Father, we just want to thank you and praise you. Absolutely magnify who you are, my King. We want to be in that position right now, and I want you to keep yourself in the spirit, in the kingdom of heaven. I want you to find yourself at his throne right now. Father, I really believe that it's time for the ecclesia to begin to experience you in a new way. You've opened up so much for us. You've opened up your heavens, your kingdom, every realm, every dimension. You have opened up your heart to us, Father. You've poured into us mysteries and secrets, and right now we want to stand before you. And I want you to just find yourself face to face with Yahweh in the capacity that you understand. Let him begin to overshadow you. Let him begin to pour into you. You know, I several times a day go into the heavens and ask the Father to overshadow me. And I say, over the last 6 weeks, it's been changing the way I think. Change the way I think. Change the way I think. That's been my focus, to change the way I think. I'm in the process even still. But I would go before the Father, and that's what I want you to do tonight. And look at yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, socially, in every area of your life, whether there's problems in all of them or whether there's only problems in some of them. I want you to find yourself in front of him. And remind yourself that it's not really that easy to stand in front of him, because he's around you and surrounding you, and he's over you and underneath you, and it is just, his presence is overwhelming. And because his presence is so intense, for me personally, I don't always know whether I'm face to face with him or whether I'm 10 feet away. It does get more clear the deeper you go into him, the more you understand what he represents, and it depends on what position you have in him and where you are in the kingdom. Some areas in the kingdom you can literally stand with him face to face. Other places in the kingdom, his glory is so intense that you can hardly come near him. Other places in the kingdom, his glory is so intense that you stand miles away and it feels that you can't breathe. But right now at his throne, and I say that his throne, the throne, it could be a place where you can stand before him and he literally just wants to overshadow you. So I want you to have him begin to overshadow you. Let him begin with the tip of your head, move down into your brain, your way of thinking, your patterns, your understanding, revelation, knowledge, insight. Things that you have learned that sometimes throws us off. Let him begin to overshadow that way of thinking. And if there's healing needed, let him bring healing into your mind. And of course, it's connected to your soul. So it's will, mind, and emotions. Let him bring healing to your soul. Let him go down into ear, nose, throat. If there's healing needed, let him go. But let the vibrations of his glory go into your body. Because I really believe that right now, Yahweh's focus is on our physical bodies. He wants us to begin to understand that the change of DNA and all the things that we are waiting for and wanting to experience, much of what it is going to be is going to happen when our physical bodies begin to understand the change that's needed to shift in to the fullness of what the Father wants to release into us. So when you stand before the Father, you want to present your physical body to him. So by faith, you're standing before him with your body. And your body is being overshadowed. Now, of course, when you're standing in the kingdom of heaven with your body, that includes your soul and your spirit. Your spirit's on the outside of your soul and your body. And his spirit is the one that overshadows you. And then Yahweh will begin to overshadow you through your spirit. Go down into your teeth. You've gone through your nose, your ears, go into your mouth. Let the Father begin to bring healing. Let him begin to bring alignment. Things that you say, things that have been spoken, things that you have heard, things that you have seen. That's you want the spiritual aspect of it, you want the physical aspect of it. Let him bring an understanding, revelation, bring his frequency into all of it. Let him go down into your throat. Let him go down into your shoulders, into your arms, into your elbows, into your joints. Let him go into your chest, into your organs, your heart, your lungs. Let him go into your kidneys, your digestive system. Let him go into your entire being, into your hips, into your legs, into your knees, into your ankles, into your feet, into your joints and your bones, into your muscle, into the fiber of your being. Let him go into every dimension and let his full frequency begin to overshadow you. There will be a shaking in the inside of your bones. That's what I don't know how to explain it. My physical body is not shaking, but I can feel the inside of my body shaking. But it's not visual, if that makes any sense. Because his frequency is bringing alignment. I want you to allow him to breathe his breath into you tonight. Let him begin to exude you. Now from this position, I want you to have your body slightly come back into the atmosphere, but let your spirit and your soul stay there. Because I want you to begin to expand your spirit. Because you're stepping into Yahweh. I want you to just simply step into Yahweh and then begin to expand your spirit into all of who he is, into all of his fullness. Now remind yourself that Yahweh gets to stand at the edge of creation, the edge of the universe. So he stands at the edge of creation and he holds the universe in his hand. So that will make you quite big. So expand yourself into him. In this place you will be engaging with the living letters. They will begin to engage with you. But what I want you to do is I want you to come into the atmosphere of the earth from that position where you have expanded your spirit man. And I want you to begin to breathe your breath into creation. Now remind yourself you are just now in his presence. You are in his fullness. Your spirit man is consumed with his glory and his fire. Your spirit man is consumed with his presence and his fullness. And when you breathe now, remind yourself of the same breath. Your spirit man doesn't need to breathe. So when you're coming into the atmosphere as a spirit being and you're breathing your breath out, what you're doing is you're releasing what's in your spirit into creation. That's what creation has been waiting for. That's what creation has been calling for. Mature sons to breathe the breath of Yahweh into creation. To breathe the breath, which is the spirit, the fullness, the glory, the fire, his presence into creation, which establishes within creation the image of Yahweh, the Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the fullness of what he once released. And we want to do this over our city, Homa, into the different parishes, and wants to go into New Orleans, wants to stretch to as wide as we possibly can go with this. And let's just begin to breathe out our breath. Remind yourself of who you are. Remind yourself of what it means to blow your breath out. And the fullness of that the glory that comes with you breathing your breath out. Father, we love you, we praise you. Absolutely glorify your holy name. You're majestic. Amen. Do you want to do me a favor? Just switch that, the top black thing on top of the phone, switch it on. That will kind of help. Yeah. That's it. Okay. What I really want to start doing, and what I urge you guys to start doing by yourself, is to find the reality of you as a spirit and the power that we carry in who we are. Because I've realized over the last couple of years now, I said 8 years, it's a little bit less than 8 years, probably about 7 years that I've been walking in these revelations. And I've understood most of what was taught to me, but the one thing I would consistently do is I would relate to myself as a spirit from a soulish point of view. If that makes any sense. Which is problematic. It's problematic, and I've realized that the reason I do that is because although I know I'm a spirit being, I still operate as a soul. And so the Father really, through exercise, has wanted us to get to the place where we can shift our mindset to begin to perceive that I am a spirit. And that's my primary function, is to believe that I'm a spirit, and as a spirit I have great value and power. I am in his presence and in his fullness. I'm created and designed to be like him. You know, if Yahweh had to come and walk the face of the earth, every living being would know about it. How many of you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and we are created in his image. He has given us the kingdom of earth. And I talked about this a little bit last night, but every part of it belongs to us. There's no demonic entity, there's no power, there's no principality, there's no ruler out there that has the right to anything that's occupied in my space. right? I mean, the only place of residence we understand he has is under our feet. Now, what he's going to be doing there, I don't know, right? but that's the only legal spot in all of creation that he has to be, unless there's legal right in our lives. And that's what we're dealing with. So as we start expanding our spirit over creation, you might not see anything, but I said last night, I want to go as far as to say that part of the new age that opened up is that this is the unseen age, where the things we're going to be doing will not be seen physically, although there will be physical results of what has been done in the spirit, but we will begin to see and perceive the power of what we do in the spirit and how it affects things around us. So these exercises really, I mean, I remember when I was just starting, I would sit in my lounge and I would physically sit on my chair and I would take my spirit out of my body and I would start walking. You know, I remember when I was a kid, I was in high school actually, and everybody was talking about astro traveling. I don't know if any one of you ever did that. Now there's a method in astro traveling where you basically, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say how you do it, but basically you lie down on your bed and you start from the tip of your head and you relax your whole body until every part of your body is relaxed. And we tried this and it worked. It's kind of freaky. But it didn't work the way that I would have wanted it to work. Because the first time I did it, I was in the bath. That's not a good idea. So and instead of my soul going upwards, it went downwards, and I could feel that I was drowning. But my head also then, of course, went into the water. The second time, I did it just before I went to bed, and I fell asleep. And I remember running to my friend's house to call him to come wake me up. That's weird. I remember a time where I experienced this after I tried to do it in several dreams. Where when I went and did things outside of my body, all freaked out, didn't know what to do, how to get myself woken up again. And of course that was the wrong motive and it was the wrong way of doing it. That's the perverted way. That's how Satanists meet in the air. How many of you know that? You know, I always say, well, Christians are probably the dumbest bunch of people I've ever met in my life. If I had to look at other religions, like Satanists, for example, they can read your mind. They have magical powers. I don't know if you ever experienced with high priests and witches and spells. They do things that we can't even begin to fathom. If you've ever been to Africa, the stuff that goes on there, the supernatural, the demonic experience through the people are crazy stuff. You know, and we think that someone that had an ingrown toenail and no longer has it is a great miracle. This stuff is crazy, and what I want to get across is we need to begin to understand that does not belong to them. You know, and the idea of my spirit leaving my body should become a natural thing. We should understand that when I begin to experience my spirit outside of who I am, and it goes into the spirit realm, first of all, it rules every area of the realm of the earth. Every dimension, every area, every realm belongs to the sons of Yahweh. When I go into the kingdom of heaven, I am still in rulership. I'm co-heir with him, which means I'm his right-hand man. There's nobody in the kingdom of heaven at a high place like you. Amen. Now you might think to yourself, well, I'm just a little baby. I've never even really gone in there. I think I might have, but never really. The angel has been there for years. But that doesn't matter. You are second in charge. Amen. And I really just want the people to begin to understand that. And of course, it's going to be a time for us to step into that revelation. Slowly but surely, we have to grow in it. And I know that we've learned it, and it's been in Scripture, and we understood it through what was taught, but this is an actual experience. That's why I want you to practice this. I remember sitting in my chair in my house, and I would have my spirit leave my body. I would go into my kid's room. I would sit there, and I would imagine myself as a spirit going into my son's room and begin to overshadow him. Both my sons slept in the same room, so I would shadow their both, and then both. I would go to the other rooms and I would shadow the other kids, and I'd go to my wife and do the same thing. And then I would expand my spirit over the streets in the town that I stay in, the little district. Then I would expand it into the city. I would expand it into the state. And I believe the Father wants us to have an understanding of what that means. The value of you as a spirit walking in the face of the earth. You know, he says in the Word, wherever you put your foot, that place belongs to you. Yeah. I mean, that's not true. I mean, you can't go, well, fine, I'm sorry, this is your company. Well, I put my foot here now, so according to the Bible, it now belongs to me. Okay, so sorry, I think you guys should leave. That's not a logical statement. It doesn't make sense in the natural. So this side of the veil, there's so much in the word that it really doesn't make sense. Because it's almost like he's lying. But if I understand in the spirit, wherever I put my foot as one that has dominion and authority over creation, that place belongs to me. Wherever I go as a fully ignited spirit being, Satan no longer has a hold, no longer has the right to be where he is, because where I go, he has to leave.
Yeah.
Amen.
And so really, he just wants us to get to that place where we understand. So we've been doing the baptisms, and I've gone over this a couple of times just to have us understand that the baptisms, the word baptizo in the Greek, is really you going into and changing substance, right? And I always do the Oreo and milk situation, and it's really just to have your mind perceive that you go into the Spirit. Because if I look at the baptism into his death, there's not mass suicide that's going to take place tonight, right? It's not mass suicide, so it's nothing in the natural. It has to take place on this side of the veil. Even with water baptism, although I get baptized with water, that doesn't really mean anything. I mean, I could use some soap and some nice bubble bath, and it would be much more practical than just going under the water. So it represents something in the physical for my soul to understand. But the actual act of baptism takes place in the Spirit. We understand this, right? So the baptism into his death is the preparation for resurrection. And that's kind of where I believe the Father wants the ecclesia to begin to step into. The reason you want to die in him and experience his death is so that you can walk in the resurrected power. You know, we have to remind ourselves that it is no longer I who live, but Christ that lives in me. But in the same breath, let's go back even further where it says the life you now live, or not the life you now live. It says the new creation is a whole different being. The old has passed away. You know, the old is dead. So if I'm in his death, then the old man, the way that I've perceived who I was, the human side of me is no longer.
Amen.
Now that's still difficult because I don't know what you think about it, but this is my natural human skin. I am a human being. When I look at myself through my eyes, this is what I see. And society and the world that we understand, they will tell us that, well, you are a human being. No matter what you believe, you're a human being. That's the species that you represent in the earth. Right? So it's a whole different perception that I have to shift away from and also understand. I am a human being, but my primary focus is to shift into the fullness of who I am as a spirit. That's why the things, especially when the baptisms come, we want to understand that I shift into the spirit realm to experience that baptism in its full capacity. It says in Romans, are you ignorant of the fact that all of us who have been baptized into Christ have been baptized into his death? Okay, this is the fact that we are talking about is a baptism into a crucified life. It is being immersed into the reality of the cross in your life and being baptized into the association with his death so that you can come into the preparation for the fullness of the resurrection. But you have to understand something. When Yeshua was resurrected, he was a completely new created being. He's fully restored. It's now no longer the Son of God as we understood it to be, the human being walking the earth that gave up his deity. In his resurrection state, he was fully God, walking fully glorified in the earth, recognized by his disciples as Jesus, the Son of God. But he looked differently. They had to focus to see who it really is. Some would walk with him for miles without knowing who they're working with. You know, Mary. Now, Mary was someone very close to him. Very, very close to him. And she didn't recognize him. You know, she actually thought he was the gardener because his being has changed. He is a whole different created state, if that makes sense. Now, so when we are rebirthed into that place of the fullness of the resurrection, he's changing everything that you are right now. It's shifting you from the natural into the supernatural, where you begin to perceive in who you are right now that you are a supernatural human being that has the capacity to do and be what God is, without the doubt that you're walking in the natural. Because whenever we see what's happening around us and where we at in the natural, what happens? We begin to doubt. You know, one of the things I've understood, I will keep practicing the things that I teach until I get it right. even if it never happens. You know, because it frustrates me. I know and experience so much in the spirit, but have experienced very little in the natural, if that makes any sense. And I listen to Ian, same thing. We have to keep practicing. How many of you have ever walked on water?
Not yet.
Like I say, the shower doesn't count. Not yet, but we're practicing, right? I do that every time I step into the pool. It doesn't work. But I do it every time. I go to the pool every single day. Not to do that, we go swim with my kids. So when I become black, that's why. But I have to be honest, American sun is not half as hot as an African sun. I don't know why it's such a huge difference, but the African sun will burn blisters on your body, and it won't even be as hot outside as what it is here. So I like that because I've got a very sensitive skin. But you have to keep on practicing. That's why I want you to do that exercise in the beginning. I want you to find yourself outside of the kingdom of heaven. Now, please understand, you don't want to go walk to and fro. We're not going in there to look for trouble. You want to go into the kingdom of heaven, and if there's an assignment through the 7 spirits that you've engaged, you will go into the earth, and they will show you what needs to be done. But if I'm in the kingdom of heaven and I'm obtaining His presence and His glory and His fullness, when I come into creation, I want to blow my breath into the city that I live in, into the state that I live in, into the nation. And if I'm called to other nations, I want to go to those nations in the spirit and breathe that glory, that fire into place. And of course, I believe it already starts with you understanding that you are birthed into His death. Exciting, right? How are you guys doing?
Good.
So in Philippians it says that it may be known, that I may know Him and the power of His resurrection. So for me to really know Him, I have to step into His death. But of course His death is not something that we understand, because let me explain or remind you that resurrection wasn't a problem for Yahweh. He's God. He didn't have a problem with giving life. The one thing God did not know how to do in any way, fashion, or form is dead. He doesn't know how to die. It's not part of who He is. It's not part of His character. He is the God of life, the God of hope. You know, death is not something He can do. So He had to take upon Himself all the sins of the world just to experience death. But then we still look at His death and we think, well, that's not even a normal way of dying. He still had control over every step He took. You know, because you do not die by letting your spirit man leave first. And then after His spirit left, His head bowed down. So after His spirit left, He was still in a functioning form, because He still had His soul and His body, right? And it's kind of weird. And then we are beginning to understand that even in the time that He was already dead and He was doing things in the spirit, His body did not decay. Because after 2 days of being dead, you will be starting to smell kind of funky. Right? And for some reason, He had control over it because He is spirit first. If you look at His ministry, we're getting to understand that everything He did in His ministry was as a spirit overshadowing His soul and His body. That's why He could shift His soul and His body into His spirit in the temple when they wanted to kill Him. And the Bible says, and He hid Himself in the temple. And they could not find Him. The Bible says, and they walked right by, but could by no means see Him. How do you do that? You know, if you understand a temple, it's a tent. There's no place to hide. And Jesus wasn't a tiny guy. You know, okay, man, he probably wasn't 300 pounds, but he was a normal, average sized guy. He couldn't hide. And he wore a big dress. That doesn't sound right. So He shifted into His spirit. And I think that He wants us to begin to understand that His entire life from the day that He started ministry was like that. So when I'm birthed into His death, I go through all the change that He went through in the time that He went back into the fullness of the kingdom. Because you have to understand, Yeshua is on the cross. His spirit leaves. Where does His spirit go to? Goes back into the fullness of the kingdom, the full supply of heaven, where He gets not just restoration, but He gets to fulfill His scroll, everything that's on it. Now, me being birthed into His death, I get to see what it looks like at the end of somebody fulfilling His scroll. Now, I don't know about you, but that excites me excessively. I can't wait for that fullness. And I remember being in a night watch experience, and I was engaging with one of the men of God that I honor very much, and he stopped and turned around and said to me, "You will fulfill your scroll." And that's not much, you know. It's like, man, But that was extremely exciting, because that's one of my major concerns, is will I fulfill my scroll? Because it's not something you can go read. And our ministry is not thousands of people saying, oh, that's so great. It's more the other way around. It's a smaller group of people that says, yes, that's great. And the majority is saying, oh, Jesus, this man is leading your people into the ground. Help me, Jesus. This thing is going to fall over tonight. Actually, it's me. I'm going to fall over tonight. How are you guys doing?
Great.
See, I believe that this resurrection, or this baptism into his death, is the expansion of who you are to become in the season that you're in right now. I always say I teach this to different schools at different times. So I mention and speak this into the lives of people in different times of their lives and their walks with Yahweh. Now, why we are at this point right now, I don't know, but I presume it's because we need to enter into this baptism.
Amen.
It's time for us to begin to understand what it means to live a crucified life, what it means to become one with Him, that full union with Christ. Because I can't do that on this side of the veil. On this side of the veil, I can have a relationship with Him, and I can trust that He's a good God. I can trust that He loves me. I can believe that if I read the Bible, pray every day, that I'll go to heaven because I'm born again or born from above, or I'm a believer. I can believe all this stuff, but it's really when I step into His kingdom that I begin to see exactly who He really truly is. That's when I begin to understand what it means to step into His death. Because what does that mean on this side of the veil? How can I possibly step into someone's death? I don't know, but if I step into my mother's death, she'll slap me and say, hey, get out of here, it's my turn. I want to be alone for a change. It doesn't make natural sense. But if I understand the death of Yeshua and what it brought and what it brings to the body of Christ, the power that's in it, the change, the shift, the explosion in the spirit, the things that happen at that moment, I want to go into it to experience that. But that's not even what it's about. His death was about His resurrection. Right? But His death brought us to the place where we are completely forgiven. His death brought us to the place where we can step in through His blood, because that's the porthole that's opened up for us, that infused dimension of light that now opens up for us. But it's the resurrection that makes all of it real. Right?
Yeah.
It's the fact that our God is alive, that everything He says now has a greater value. It's that dimensional shift that takes place, because now I can operate in the power that resurrected Him. Because that's available to the saints. Now it's got nothing to do with the gifts. And I love the gifts, so don't misunderstand me. I just don't want us to put our focus on the gifts. Because my focus is on the gifts, but I've shifted and I've grown, because it was only there for a measure of time. And the gift is just given in a measure, it's not the fullness. Because if the gifts is to the utterance of the Spirit, then Yeshua did not operate in the gifts. Because what He did and the way He operated was not out of the utterance of the Spirit. He healed whenever He wanted to. He prayed for every sickness and every disease that was around Him, and everybody got healed. He had the capacity and the ability to do things that we cannot fathom. So it was not the gifts. He lived in the Spirit. He lived in that resurrected power, and that's the capacity that was overshadowing Him on a daily basis. Because He says things like, I only do what I see my Father do. So every day for the 3 years of His ministry, He was engaging with the fullness of what the Father revealed to Him daily as He engages in the heavens. So understanding that He wants us to engage into that revelation, into that dimension of love, and it's the resurrection power. Right? I don't know if that makes any sense. It says in John 15, abide in me, and I in you. As a branch cannot bear fruit on itself except it abides in the vine. So neither can you except if you abide in me. And I am the vine, you are the branches, and he that abides in me, and I in him, the same breath beareth. The King James is weird. He shall bear much fruit. I have the King James in front of me, but I don't like to read it like it's the King James, because then I sound retarded. We do not talk like that anymore, right? Maybe it's just me. But so he says, beareth, but I thought it was never mind. Okay, the same, that we shall bear much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And that's what I love about this baptism. It's the idea of going into him and beginning to have him overshadow every part of my being. And as I die with him and understand that he died as me, and I'm in this position literally my old ways are passing away. The way I was birthed into creation is passing away. I'm about to ignite the kingdom of heaven and the full capacity of that resurrected power over my spirit, so that I can begin to ignite into my soul and into my body through my spirit that's in Christ in the kingdom of heaven the things that I originally needs to bear in who I am. Yes. Not the things that I've lost in the birth from my parents, which is birth into sin, right? I get to be birthed into the fullness of who I originally was intended to be, because I look upon him and who he is, and in his death I am clothed in that. And which means I get to go through that process of entering into the resurrection, which I absolutely love. So I love the idea of abiding in him, and I've gone through this process with you guys several times, but personally I would have you go into this as often as you can. Now, it was an encounter I had, but I'm sure each of you had a similar encounter somewhere in your walk with Yahweh where you become one with him. And it's a constant thing that runs through my mind. Just remembering that specific time when I was lying next to him, when we shifted into each other, and I could feel how I'd become one with him. I've always wanted to be the bride. It was a tough decision to make. I don't know how many of you feel about it. There's nothing womanish or brideish about me. I always say, well, the only thing that could be kind of brideish is my chest, and really it's not even all that big. I've seen guys with bigger boobs. Men doesn't have boobs. They've got pectorals, sorry. But there's nothing female about me. It's a tough decision to make, to want to be the bride. I always figured myself in a little white dress, and I remember my wife had a birthday. She was my girlfriend a long time ago, and we had a ladies' night. So all the men, everybody dressed like a woman. And that didn't go down well. I had a short little mini on with my beard and my wig and these shoulders and guns, and it was just funny. Didn't look right. Just didn't look right. So trying to be the bride is tough. I don't know how you guys feel about it. The ladies have no problem with it. That's why the church is full of women, right? Because the guys are still kind of, I don't know about this whole bride thing. I'm going to have to go through a lot of change to get this whole bride thing going. It's just weird. But it's because there's been such a misunderstanding. The church still today, still through all the different translations we have, all the studies we've done already, the church still believes that we are the bride of Christ. And I'm not going to fight with anybody about this, but we cannot be the bride of Christ. Not in the perception that we have, because we've got a Greek mind regarding being the bride. That's our perception. The Hebrew mindset of a bride is a covenant. This side, the Greek mindset is just, well, we step into marriage. I become your bride. You put a ring on my finger. We get to kiss the bride, and we go to honeymoon, and we have children, and we live together and have a great life. But that's not what it's about. He never says that I actually physically want to marry you, because you have to look through all of the context of the word for this to make sense, right? Because Jesus is my brother. Well, okay, that already is a glitch in the download there somewhere. Because in the Old Testament talks about the major problem, don't marry family. Jesus can't be my bride. He can't be my groom. Now I've heard people say, no, we are not the bride, we are the groom. I don't know how they got to that revelation, but it's a group of people that we all know pretty well. And a lady that I spoke to over the last couple of weeks was telling me, well, this is the reason I left the group. And I said, well, what's the reason? And she said, well, they came to the conclusion that they are actually the groom and not the bride. We are all the groom and not the bride. Said, okay, wait. He says we are the body. That's his desire. The bride side of it is on this side of the veil, and it's covenant. Now, I've talked about this a million times, but we are in covenant with him. It's like unto a bride. It is that deep intimacy that husband and wife have with each other. You can't have it with anybody else. I don't know anybody as long as what I've known my wife, in the measure that I've known her for. We've been together for 20 years. We met, both backslidden. So we met, and well, actually what happened is I had a girlfriend, she had a boyfriend. So we became friends, just lusting over each other. Then she broke up first, and then I broke up with my girlfriend about a year later. And then we became really good friends for about 6 months. Then we started dating, and then very quickly after we started dating, we moved into into the same little flat, you know. So thank you, Jesus, for your mercy. Well, we did that for 5 years, and then the Lord said, when we wanted to get married, the Lord said, okay, you need to move out for a year. You need to be separate from each other, sustained from sexual activity, and I want this to work. Do you want this to work? So then we got married, and we've been together for a long time. But in this time, I got to know her. There's no one on the planet that knows me like my wife knows me. You know, she can finish my sentence. I don't even have to say what's wrong, and she'll tell me what's wrong. You know, she can have a normal day, and I'd say, okay, baby, what's wrong? And she'd be like, well, there's nothing wrong. No, there's something wrong. What's going on? Because I know her, you know, and she knows me. It's great. It's a deep, intimate place. But nobody knows me like my body knows me. Not even my wife. You know, there's things that my body knows. There's things that I know about my body that nobody knows. There's things going on. It's just a oneness that shifts. And that's where this baptism comes into place. Becoming the body. Understanding that I am raised up into Him, into the fullness of that resurrected capacity, into that fullness of life. It's not about being the bride. The bride can do her own thing. The body cannot do its own thing. The body has to submit to what the mind subsides to. And that's why when I'm in the kingdom of heaven, I'm the body. I'm one with Him. When He thinks of something, that's what I think of. That's why I can say, His will is my will. Whatever He wills me to do, that's what I do. His desires is my desires. Whatever He says, I say. Because as a prophet, God speaks to the prophet. Then the prophet takes that message and relates it to the people. As an oracle, it's different. The oracle speaks through the voice of Yahweh as Yahweh speaks it. Now that doesn't make sense to us, but when I speak as an oracle, I don't know what I'm about to say. And I realize I've changed the way I prophesy because that's the way the Father wants us to do it now. You don't need to know what you're going to say before you say it. Because if you know what you're about to say, you're just going to put your own perception into it. So I even stopped doing that. Even before I really began to operate as an oracle, I stopped prophesying like that. Okay, Father, okay, Lord, what do you want to say to this person? And I would see a flower, or I would see a tree, or a cow, or whatever. You know, and then from there a picture would grow, and I would begin to perceive what the Father wants to say, and I would interpret what I see as a prophetic word, and from there it will explode into something that I either could not have known, or something the Father just wants to do in His life. But as an oracle, because you're the body, you just open your mouth and the Father starts speaking through you. Amen. And that's just a portion of it, but it's understanding that my body cannot do anything that my brain hasn't decided to do. You know, I start walking off because that's what my mind decided to do. I jump in the air because, you know, unless I sneeze or cough, that's involuntary actions. So that means I'm sick or I'm getting sick. There's something wrong with my arm. Just do this, all weird. And I'm going to be like, whoa. I remember I was about 19 years old, and we were working. I think I've told you guys. I was working at just a one-day thing. We were directing traffic, parking for cars at a horse race place. And right at the end of the day, we were busy packing everything up, sitting on a truck. The truck would drive, and we jump off and pull our pegs. And I remember my head doing this. And it was so weird. And I was like, whoa. And then I did it again a couple of times. And then I remember standing in front of this red Honda. And all of a sudden my head just started shaking like this. And I couldn't do anything. I was standing there thinking, what is going on here? And I woke up in a helicopter with a lady sticking a pen down my throat. I'm thinking, what are you doing? And she's like, has it ever happened to you before? No one's ever stuck a pen down my throat. Thank God. And she's like, no, you had an epileptic fit. You know, and it was like weird. They couldn't find it on the brain scan. It was just weird. But that is the only time I really experienced my body doing something that my brain was not releasing it to do. And that's kind of, it was extremely weird. I was sick, I was in bed. Well, I wasn't quite sick, but I was taken to the hospital. Everyone was freaking out because that's not natural. So when you step into His death and you start operating through that resurrected power, you are one with Him, and He begins to overshadow you in the fullness of what He releases into who you are, to overshadow you with all of what you're supposed to become. And that is a place where we don't understand if you're on this side of the veil. On this side of the veil, I want to be the bride, and he's going to be the groom. But what we don't understand, or what we're not reminded of, that you are my bride and I'm your groom just before we got married. Just before we get married. Then he pronounces you as husband and wife. So if I'm the bride right now, I have no real intimacy with him, and I do not have an inheritance. It's only when we get married that I become the wife, that I have an inheritance and I have a place for intimacy. So we have to begin to look at what Yeshua is presenting here. He didn't quite want us to marry him. He wants us to understand what covenant we're walking in, what we are stepping into. It goes hand in hand with the cloud of Moses, right? Understanding the marriage ketubah, the fact that he wants us to enter into contract with him so that we can go beyond the veil and be one with him, but not as a bride, as a body. And I remember this is a really funny, weird thing for me. I was in the spirit, and I don't know if I ever shared it with you, but it was in the process where I was becoming one with him. And I was in his side, and he said to me, it's time to become one. And immediately I thought sexually, and it was really weird. And he looked at me and he said, no, it's not like that at all. And that was when I first realized we're not the bride. We're the body. And I don't know how to express that to the ecclesia for us to begin to understand the measures of how the Father so desperately desires for us to move away from the idea that we are the bride. That's just a concept that he was trying to reveal to us. But once we step into the fullness of that baptism, things starts opening up to us. And we begin to understand that I abide in him and he abides in me. We are one. I am his body. Right? Now in the same breath, I'm not actually really his body. Oh no. Help us, Jesus. This is too confusing. It represents the same thing as what the marriage represents. It's the fact that he wants me completely sold out to him, dedicated in every area. I cannot do anything outside of his voice. I cannot do, not because I choose not to, although my body cannot choose to just do his own thing. Even if I make a joke and say that, my brain decided to do that before my arm went out. So it's really something that cannot be done. I cannot willfully do an involuntary reaction because my brain would have decided to do it before I did it. It has to be some sickness, some disease. So he's calling a company of people into a position where we are birthed into his death and gone into his fullness of resurrection and understanding what it means to be in that position as if we were the body, where I am dedicated completely unto him. I have presented myself to him as a living sacrifice. I have gone into my life and I've poured everything in me out through his Holy Spirit, through all that he's brought to me, and I've submitted myself to him 100%. That's lordship, right? And that's the progressive shift, because I allow him to become Lord of my life. I shift from that position into the kingdom of heaven, because once he's Lord of my life, I begin to walk in that fullness of being born from above. Once I'm born from above, I can see into the kingdom. Once I can see into the kingdom, I can go into the kingdom. Once I can go into the kingdom, I become a son. Once I begin to understand my sonship, I grow into my kingship. I begin to grow into my priesthood. I begin to grow into the fact that I'm a legislator, and I begin to understand that he wants me to now operate as an oracle. And it happens all through the process of understanding that I'm like unto a body to him.
Amen.
I don't know how that makes sense to you guys, but
Yep.
It makes a lot of sense to me. But then again, most of the time, I'm just preaching to myself. No, I mean, really, I seriously am. Because none of the stuff I said over the last 20 minutes has been on my notes. For as many of us that are baptized into Christ, that put on Christ. And I love that. And that's actually one of the exercises I've been doing. I remember Ian talking about something similar he did in the beginning of his walk, and I just started doing it because I remember myself saying, okay, well, I'm going to set my alarm on my phone for every 10 minutes so that I can speak in tongues all the time. And I did that for a year, and it triggered me to literally be able to speak in tongues all day long. But then when I started abiding in Him and I started wanting the kingdom of heaven to become a reality to me, I had to change some things. So every time I got into my car, every time I opened the door to get in, I would say to myself, okay, I'm getting into the kingdom of heaven. I'm stepping into the kingdom of heaven. Whenever I opened the curtain, wherever I climbed out of the shower, whenever I put clothes on, I'm stepping into Christ. I'm stepping because I'm seated in Him. And whenever I sat down on my chair, I'm seated in Christ in heavenly places. So I'll be sitting down, close my eyes, and I'll go into heavenly places. Then I begin to understand, okay, heavenly places is not just in the kingdom of heaven. It is dimensional realms within the earth that I have to have authority over and take mountains back. Then I would start going into the kingdom of heaven, have the Father submit something to me through the seven spirits, what needs to be done. Then I will be sent into the earth because I've already framed that picture. And I did that all the time. I still do it today. Every time I open the door, every time I put a shirt on, every time I put shoes on, every time I do something physical, I remind myself of stepping into the kingdom. And I don't know, this is just practical things that I have done over the years that's helped me to engage in a greater way. But what I've realized is it's all about practice. And sometimes you practice something and you just don't feel anything. And then we rebel for a week because, oh, well, I didn't feel anything. This stuff doesn't work. And I remember going through something in my life where I wouldn't have said whether it was a sin, it was a habit I had that probably wasn't the best habit. And then I really wanted to stop with this, and eventually I got to no longer do it. But in the process of stopping this, I was angry with God. So I was like, okay, that's it. I'm not doing this with you for right now. I'm going through this thing now. Just wait until I'm done. I'll come back. I'll come do what I need to do. But right now, I'm going through something, and I need to get restored. Because it's like you've taken something from me. No, it's not true. He didn't take anything from me, right? My soul holds on to what it loves, you know. So we need to understand when we're going through the process of becoming what He wants us to be, we're going to give up some things that we didn't want to give up. You know, I remember when I just got born again, the first thing I had to give up was swearing, and I realized that when I was sharing my testimony with somebody, and she said, halfway through the testimony, geez, but you can swear. You know, I mean, then I wanted to give up smoking. I smoked for many times, a long time in my year. But it wasn't a major problem, but the church that I was in, the congregation I was part of, the group of people, it was a big problem. You can't have a testimony if you're smoking. And so I wanted to stop smoking. And when I stopped smoking, I was angry. Because I don't know if anybody smokes in this room, but it's an addiction, so it's something your body enjoys to do. So when I stopped doing something I really enjoy, it feels like something's been taken away from me. You know, I don't know if you've ever done a bodybuilding competition. Oh, help me, Jesus. Everything that you love is taken away from you. The food, right? You eat the most blandest, most boring, most disgusting food for 3-4 months at a time. And it's terrible to go through this. I didn't enjoy bodybuilding because I had to compare it against guys that use steroids, and I didn't, in my life, because of that elliptic fit, I never used steroids. Because they actually thought, well, your testosterone level is so high, it's because you were on steroids that you had this elliptic fit. And I was like, well, I had never used any steroids. And then they said to me, well, you better stay away from it because if you use steroids, it'll trigger epilepsy in your body. Yeah, whatever. But what was I talking about? Oh my goodness. Okay, that's it. You're all fired.
Quitting stuff.
It's quitting stuff.
Yeah.
I know maybe it's different for you guys, but going through that 3 months of eating chicken breasts and then you can't even take salt in anymore because it's just a dry piece of chicken breast. Later I found out you can put herbs and stuff on, but some of the herbs will still restore water. So you want to get onto that stage with as little fat and as little water as possible. And the process of getting there is terrible. And the results should have been great, but because I was a heavyweight natural, there was only 2 people on the stage, and I got second place. So I don't know if that was a good or bad thing. I'm thinking, well, okay, you know, that's not nice. And then, of course, I did the national, which was the regional, which was Cape Town and Johannesburg and everything, and I got a 3rd place, and there was 4 people, so that was a little bit better. But because natural heavyweights doesn't really exist. Then, of course, later I found out that the guy who won the overall competition was on steroids. So I'm thinking, okay, wait, I'm not doing this anymore. But I remember having to give up that stuff that you love so much. It's been part of your life forever. You know, I look at some of the sins in my life that I had to give up over the years. It's tough. It's not easy. And then when you do give it up, it's like, okay, that's it. You know, I remember going into the kingdom of heaven the very first time, and I just had a ball. I had a great time. I was playing around, doing all kinds of crazy things I've always wanted to do. When I say, okay, when I go to heaven, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to slide down in my socks and the streets of gold. I don't know if anyone ever said that. You know, the first thing I'm going to start doing when I'm in the kingdom of heaven, and all things are possible, I'm going to start flying through the earth, you know. And those are similar types of things that I was doing. And the Father called me into, I believe now, to be the court of the Lord. And he said to me, my son, and it was stern. It wasn't a nice greeting. But he put his hand around my neck and he said, there's just too much on your scroll for you to play around like this. And that's it. I rebelled for 3 weeks. I think this stuff is natural, but in the same breath, it's that transformation, that process that we go through, you know. So it's going through that in the kingdom of heaven, because that's where everything speeds up. That's where the Father begins to open you up, begins to look at what needs to change in your life, begins to pour into you. This baptism brings you to the place where you literally begin to see what it means to be the body, what it means to be in his full resurrected state. We understand that he is not the Son of God the way we perceive it. He's Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh. He is in the fullness of the Godhead. He is the creator of all things. He is a multitude of a being. It's more than what we perceive. See, in our natural capacity, we cannot understand him. But when I'm birthed into his death and I step into the fullness of his resurrection and I literally find myself in the kingdom of heaven, in all of who he is, then he begins to overshadow the reality of what I am to become in and over me, so that I can begin to stand in that as a promise. Because it's very difficult for us to understand who we are to become if what we have heard up to this point is all that there is. Mm-hmm. But when you step into him and you see who he really is, then things kind of change. So that's this baptism just made this a little bit easier for me to understand. That preparation for becoming one with him, that preparation of stepping into becoming the body and understanding what that means to be the body of God, the body of the fullness of who Yeshua is, and to carry that into creation, to carry that into everything that we need to legislate from out of the kingdom of heaven into creation. If that makes any sense. Let's stand. Father, we love you, we praise you, we absolutely glorify and magnify your name, Lord. And there's so much still that we really don't understand. There's so much that you want to reveal to us, Father. But I want everyone in this room, and even those on Facebook and then later on YouTube, let's step in to him. Let's step away from this side of the veil and let's go in behind. Let's enter in through his blood. Let's go into the kingdom of heaven. Let's step into it. Let's become one with him. Let him, in that resurrected state, in that fullness of his power, start revealing and releasing to you and over you who you are. Let you begin to understand the power that the Father has given you to operate in. That fullness of you being the body, that you cannot make your own decision. You cannot go anywhere. You do not walk or talk or say anything or make any decision outside of him. And then you begin to understand, well, everything you desire is his will. Everything you want to do is his will for you, because we become pure, we become holy, we become set apart. I am meditate, focus only on the things above. I am in that place where all things are holy unto me, not because I am now all of a sudden above sin, because I've entered into the kingdom of heaven. I've lived and moved and had my being there, and all I know is what I've experienced in that kingdom. All I know is what I've seen in my Father. All I know is what is in him, and that's what I legislate into creation. That's what I do in my life, because that's all I know. That which I was birthed into is dead, gone. It's no longer there. I am birthed deep into my Father, and I'm raised up in the fullness of who he is, in that resurrected power. And I stand in Yeshua, and he washes over me and reminds me daily of who I am and what I am to become as I rise up deeper in him. Father, we love you, we praise you, and we honor you. You're a majestic, beautiful God. Let us become all that's there for us to be in this season, Father, as we engage with your word, as you pour revelation into us, and we open ourselves up as spirit beings to all that you want to bring us. In the name of Yeshua. Amen. Amen.